So I am going to show my fire effect for making like a little explosion with a mushroom cloud look. This is kind of what the finished effect will look like. You have a little part shooting up and then some kind of a cloud of flame exploding out of that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of break it down to two parts. And again, that to get that fireball effect, it's important to get a good looking image for that. And again, I used the paint coat creator to create some nice fireballs. It was pretty easy to get a good looking one. But to start out, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to show what the first part of it, because there's really two parts, and we want to focus on this first part, which is really pretty simple, but I'm using a different spawn effect which I haven't used before, and I didn't realize it was even possible. So I'll kind of show that because it's a very useful in this case. Let's get this guy on screen. Shrink that down there. So what I have is I have two different systems going on here. And it's important to note that you can have as many systems in any effect you want to blend together or make them in sequence. In this case, I do kind of make them in sequence using a delay. So the first part that I want to show, that's really an important part, the rest is pretty simple, is this, the spawn system. It's going to be a constant spawn rate, but I don't want it to go on forever. I don't want a burst. At first I was working with a burst, and I want the particles to come out for only a period of time, but I do not want them to come out all at once. And I'll show you kind of how you can do that. So if I select my spawn system, let's give me some room here, you'll notice that this loop duration, loop count, and delay mode are not set to the defaults, which is loop duration normally is set to infinite, loop count is set to infinite, and delay mode is none. This is kind of the default. And this is what you see when you do a constant spawn effect. And you can see this is what I get. I get particles just coming out at a certain rate per second and going on forever, but I don't want them to go on forever because this is kind of an effect that bursts out and then goes away. So when you select this, you can see over in the inspector, you can choose to make this constant, and in my case I made this 0.16 and I made the loop count 3 in order to get kind of the length of column, kind of a fire column effect, and how long it's going to last. And I want it to delay. Actually, I don't really want to do any delay. At first I was playing around with the delay, but I really don't want it to delay in this case. My fireball I do want to delay because I don't want it to come out all at once. But in this case I'm not going to delay at all, so I could actually just say none, and that goes away. So that's the spawn, and that's important. The other important part about this is, of course, the lifetime is going to affect how tall the column gets and how long they're going to live before they go away. And I have this set to 1 second. I just make a really big capacity, making sure it doesn't run out of particles to display. That's really not really important as long as it's big enough. I set the velocity. And again, velocity is important because that's going to affect how tall it gets and kind of the density of it. And I have that set to 0.6 in the Y direction. This other important part is where it's coming out of. I don't want it to all come out of a single point, so I have it set in this a circle arc. And it's a pretty small arc, but this is going to affect kind of the width of your column. So if you see, if I play this, you can see it's coming right out of that circle. If I want it wider, I can grab this and make it wider. Of course, now I don't have enough particles, so they're not all solid. If you want it bigger and wider, you'd need to increase the particle rate. Right, this 300 would have to be bigger. So if I made this bigger, 600 say, then I still get a solid circle. But in this case, I'm going to undo both of those because this circle is the diameter I want. Nothing fancy, no shaders, just go ahead. I set my colors, of course. The default, I can set my color random between yellow and red in order to get kind of the look I want. No need to update the particle, and then go on no shader. And I am going to set the size at 0.3. So that's really all there is for that column. Again, it's this circle arc that's important, and this spawn doing that loop and the loop count in order to get my column to be created at a certain length and a certain duration. All right, so let's take a look at our fireball next. So again, in this case, I again have a loop duration of 0.16. In this case, my loop count's only 1. That is going to affect how long my fireball lasts. And again, you can play around with those values. I could have externalized those to kind of play around with them outside of the VFX graph. But since it isn't something that constantly comes out, it's a bit trickier or less effective being able to play around with those. And unless you're gonna make some effect that you're going to use again and again and again, there's no real reason to externalize those. You can just play around with those. And anytime I change this, so if I change my rate to 300, as soon as I edit it, it's going to just rerun it anyway. So again, I am using 300 for the number of particles per second, again to get the look of the fireball I want. I am going to delay it before the loop by 0.1 seconds. So I want my fire to shoot up, and then 0.1 seconds later, I want my fireball to appear to kind of give you that mushroom cloud look. The velocity, I do have a variable velocity between the left and right. So my X, I'm going to vary between -2 and 0.2, and the Z the same in order to get that little spread. If you make these bigger, the spread's going to be more because it will randomly move left or right. And I'm going to get a constant velocity up. So the start is the fireball is going to move up. I have my lifetime between 1 and 2. My angle, so I'm going to rotate that fireball just to give some variety to the look between 90 and -90 in the Z direction. And remember, it will, so the Z direction is kind of the part that's facing us. And so it will rotate that image to give some bit of a variation. And then the position where it's going to start, again, is going to be a circle arc. And the position, how far it is off the 0 plane, will determine the height of that mushroom cloud. So that's important. Obviously, the diameter will affect the spread, the default start spread of my particles as they come out. So I've adjusted the position up a little bit. Of course, that's the radius of the circle. this is the other thing. So I am updating the particle. And what I'm doing is I have this speed adjust that I am externalizing. And what I'm going to do is this speed adjust, I'm going to give it a negative value. And so over time, I'm going to be adding to that velocity to make it kind of stop. It's going to move up, and then it's going to slow down and then start falling by this speed adjust amount. I probably could use gravity, probably would do a similar effect. This gives me a bit more. It gave me the look I wanted, I guess. There's a couple different ways of doing it. This is the way I chose. It gives more of a linear method for slowing that down and dropping it. Then pretty similar to the shader I used before. I will go over that. I played around with this quite a while. I was trying to use more of a smoke image to give that billowing fire look, and it just was not working out. I spent a lot of time on that before I came up with a fireball that actually gave me the look I want. You really don't know what it's going to look like until you try it out. And I played around with, I wanted to make the fireball kind of fade to smoke, because in looking at various videos of explosions, I found that the edges of the fire turns black as the fireball expands. I just could not get the look I want. You never know what it's going to look like, and I just couldn't. It wasn't working out. But I will go over that shader because it does kind of highlight one other option for doing some of the linear interpretation colors. I'm always going to have it face the camera, size over life. Again, nothing fancy. It just gets bigger as it goes by a curve there. I thought I needed to multiply the size. I ended up not, so that's just 1. So the important parts are this delay, how much it delays to get the look you want, the spread that you want, and then this speed adjust to make it kind of slow down and fall down in order to get the look we want. So I was pretty happy with it. It ended up looking kind of what I imagined it to be. I like the look of the flames and the fire. Taking a look at the image I used for that fireball. Oh, the blend mode also I'm using is alpha. I did play around with, if you change it to alpha or additive, it makes it really bright. That does work if that's what you want. What it's going to do is it's going to keep adding all the images on top of each other. That's why it gets brighter. That kind of gives a good look too. A little less bright. I chose the alpha. The fire is pretty much bright enough. So this is the fireball I ended up using. Again, it's pretty easy just typing in that co-creator to give you a fireball with a black background. I tried several different ones. This is the one I'm just using now. So let's take a quick look at the shader that I used. So one thing I did, it's pretty similar to the one I just showed in my flame video, where it's using a noise pattern. It is subtracting off the dissolve amount, clamping it, and then multiplying it and feeding that into the alpha channel. Again, in this case, I'm using the actual colored image and not a black and white image. It's still going to use the brightness. This kind of gave me the look I wanted. I didn't try a black and white image to monochromize it, but this actually worked pretty well. what I will go over in a little more details, what I did with the linear interpretation. What I wanted was that the first 1/3, so when going from 0 to 0.66, I wanted it to go from yellow to orange. And then when the lerp value went from 0.67 to 1, I wanted to go from orange to gray. And I did that thinking that it could kind of turn to a smoke look. It ended up not giving me that smoke look because the mix of the orange and really dark, and I ended up making it black, just gave me a really dark orange and not the smoke I wanted. I think you'd need to actually probably create maybe smoke particles when the fire particles die. Probably would give it to you. But I'll kind of go over, this is a way of really doing lerp interpretation between 3 colors, right? A start, a middle, and an end. And so what I did is first, for the first part, I'm gonna multiply the color fade by 1.66. And that makes it, when it's going from 0 to 0.66, that makes it go from 0 to 1. Essentially by multiplying it by 0.166. So the output of this is going to go between 0 and 1 is going to feed into this when our color fade value goes between 0 and 0.66. Then my orange to gray, I'm going to subtract 0.66. So when this is 0.66, this is 0. So 0 comes out. I'm going to multiply by 3. So when it goes between 0 and 0.33, it's going to go, the output is going to go between 0 and 1, which of course gives us our orange to gray. Then I'm going to compare our color fade to 0.66. So if it is greater than 0.66, it's going to feed this lerp value, which is going between orange and gray. When it's below, meaning it's not greater than 0.66, it's going to feed in this yellow to orange. And then, of course, that output of that is going to multiply by our fireball. Thought I may need to add a value to make it brighter, but I didn't. So these are really unnecessary. 2 adds. They're really doing nothing. Again, I play around a lot with these. I forgot to clean this up. Trying a lot of different things in order to get different looks. And in the end, simpler is better. It's kind of what I found. And then, of course, that's fed into our base color. So that's kind of an example of how you can make a lerp value going from between 3 different colors in our shader. So that's pretty much it. Again, you know, got the effect I wanted. Looks pretty good. I was pretty happy with it. So I'm going to work on one last item for my next video, and just some different ways of doing just a plain old explosion, fireball kind of coming out all at once, and maybe add some other effects, maybe add some extra fire and stuff shooting out to make a different look explosion for this last kind of fire VFX graph effects. So that's pretty much it for this video. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for my next one.